All right, looks like we're live.
Sweet.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend. Leave a comment where you're coming in from, where you're tuning in from. I'm out in Tempe, Arizona. Jesse, where you at?
I'm in Vancouver, Canada, the great 51st state of America. Cherished and loved.
Let's see. Comments. Hold on a second. Let me just make sure our comments are coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Right on, Jesse. What's new?
Here, hanging out with you. We're always working on something. But no, I'm ready to talk a little bit about Land Insights. I'm learning a lot from this as well. So I'll let you guys do your thing, and love to help demo and show. Oh, there's Peter. Peter, how's it going? So this time we see the comments. I think last time I didn't see any comments. I don't know.
I had to turn on the show comments.
So cool.
They did a little UI update.
Yeah.
So we
there you go.
So we're good now.
Peter, hope you're doing well. Good to see you, by the way. Yes.
What? Peter's just outside Calgary, so he's in the 51st state as well.
Yeah. We've got a couple of Canadians, I think, that are in the land business, so it's good to see Peter here.
Yeah. So how does it work to invest in land when you live outside the U.S.? How do you have to structure that? That's always a question I've had.
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to talk about that. Well, with Pebble, we've got quite the complex structure too. So I'm no lawyer. I won't get into that at all.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been confused by that. But yeah, there's a ton of international U.S. land investors out there. So it always interests me.
We've got a hotspot out in Germany. We've got a hotspot out in Israel. So, and then everywhere else, you have the Danielson sisters out in the Philippines. And so, yeah, they're everybody. Even it's a great business to be able to just do anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So we're going to be comping properties. So we're going to be showing you guys how to comp blind offers. We're going to be showing you how to comp deals. So everything comping related. I'd say this is one of the most important parts of the land business, and a lot of people get this wrong. I was doing a little presentation with a group of land investors that live out in Tempe. We all live in the same house. It's called the Land House. So I did a presentation on comping yesterday. So I'm very warmed up with this, but I'll be doing a full tutorial on comping today. We'll also talk about how we can integrate that with Pebble so that you stay organized and avoid having to recomp. I've noticed a lot in my business that I used to be recomping the same properties over and over again because I wouldn't save my work. So I'm going to teach you guys a framework of getting it right the first time and then comping your deals as they come through, because every single property is going to be different. And there's going to be alterations in that value based on the conditions of the property. So it's ultimately what you guys are going to learn are ways to save time, ways to stay organized, and ways to be accurate so that you avoid having to renegotiate all your deals. So to all the Pebble viewers out there, if you don't know me, I'm Rylan Loader. I'm the co-founder of Land Insights, and I run a very heavy operation as a land investor. So I run a land flipping company on top of Land Insights, and basically everything we've built in Land Insights has spurred from what I needed in my land business. So Land Insights, it's built by land investors. I'm constantly trying to improve my craft and build better systems in my business. I have an engineering background, so I'm very systems oriented, and I like to make sure I'm saving time and doing everything correctly and like the most streamlined method. So the comping tool is my baby. So we've been working on this for about 2 years, and we just recently released this. within the last few months. So it's been a craft that we've been developing over time, and it's been used in my business for some time now. So I'm going to show you guys how I use it in my business and how I'm able to put out such a large scale. So if you guys don't know my scale, I have about 10 people in my land investing business. The whole business is completely streamlined. I'm not involved in the day-to-day at all. We have compers, we have several acquisition managers, several lead managers. It's all systematized, and my team is very trained up on comping. So the systems we put in place make it so easy that pretty much anybody can do it that has somewhat of a mathematical brain. So Jesse, I think I covered a lot here. Is there anything you want to add on there before we start?
No, bringing in comps, we can certainly show that, and you know, bringing in your pricing as well. I don't know if I don't know how you want to structure this, but I'm here to support you and show a little bit within Pebble if needed. Although I do want to let you know, Rylan, I think we're not showing on our YouTube right now, so I don't know if there's something you need to click. I didn't want to cut you off earlier, but
let's see.
It's what I heard. That's what my assistant told me. I'm not 100% sure.
Let's see on your end. You're coming through.
I believe
it's good now. It just started.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to go over basically the framework of what I teach the people in my team that are going to be in a comping position at my land business. So basically, guys, taking all this information, I really recommend you guys take notes, because this is strategy that I've come up with over several years in order to allow me to scale to such a high level. So my business, we're comping anywhere between 80 and 150 comps per day. So we're doing a lot, and we're making sure we're very accurate. These 80 to 150 comps, they're in depth. We're really analyzing these deals, and these comps, these are deals that are coming inbound. So leads who accepted offers, leads who are interested in working with us. So these are hot leads. So it requires us to spend a lot of time and make sure we're getting these numbers right. So let's go over the two types of comping. So both of these are equally important, but one comp is going to be your blind offer. Okay. So this is for anybody who's trying to qualify leads on the front end. So let's say you're sending letters, blind offer letters to sellers, or maybe you're sending text messages, or maybe you're pricing out your data so that your cold caller can have like a baseline price to work with and throw out to people as they come in. So these are your qualifying numbers. These are your blind offers or your range offers, whatever you want to do. It could be blind, it could be range. I don't recommend neutral that much. I prefer to always have some type of baseline price to offer when we're qualifying leads. And then once we have our blind offers and we get on the phone with sellers and we start talking to them, we have our deal offers. So both of these are equally important. Blind offers, we're just pricing basically by acreage. Deal offers, we're pricing that individual property. So one is sort of analyzing the area that you're going after and coming up with an offer based on that by acreage. The other one is actually going in depth, looking at every single comp in that area, anything in a direct radius of your property, for sale listings, all that stuff. And then also making adjustments based on the conditions of the property. So if it's sloped, if there's wetlands, flood zones, we're looking at that. So the strategies, like, they're going to be different for each one. And I'm going to be going over both of these in this so that you guys are on the same page with me. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so before we get into anything regarding comps, I want to go over some statistics, okay? So don't worry if you haven't been to statistical class. I'll dumb this down as much as possible so that anybody can understand it. But think of the bell curve, okay? So the bell curve is a statistical analysis on a data set. So think of this axis right here as the acreage, or sorry, the price per acre, okay? And then think of this as basically the quantity in your data set. So this is 34.1% of your data set. Okay, so 34% of all the comps in your area, another 34%, and then this is your price per acre. So basically, these are your outliers. So this is the lowest price per acre, and this is the highest price per acre. And then what we're looking at in general is, let's just call this 10 acres. So we're looking at a 10-acre comp or a 10-acre property, and we're trying to figure out the value of it. So value goes from the lowest point to the highest point. So let's just call this 5,000 an acre. Let's call this 15,000 an acre. So this is your median. So this would be your average of your entire data set of comps. So if you're looking at a bunch of 10-acre comps from 5,000 an acre to 15,000, this would be 7,500 per acre, right? Most people would say this is market value, okay? And I'm going to tell you that this is not market value when you're a land investor. This is the average, but there's many things adjusting this data set to make that average. Up here, your 15,000 acre comps, that could have been a house that got into your data set. That could have been a commercial property that got into your data set. Maybe there's gold on the property. Like these really mess with our data set, and so do these little ones. Like this could have been an absolutely landlocked, horrible property that's on a side of a hillside, right? So why would you want to consider a median price when you're a land investor trying to flip a property as quickly as possible? So maybe if you listed your property for a year to 2 years, you might get a value somewhere in here. Maybe you might get something over here, right? But our goal as land flippers is to turn over these properties as quickly as possible. And because of that, I've realized with the hundreds of deals we've done in our business, our market value is somewhere in here. Our market value is in this lower range of the bell curve. That being said, I'm comping very, very conservatively. I'm never using median. Okay. I am never saying, oh, that's the average of all the solds, therefore it's worth that. Never. That never happens. Get that out of your head that you can get that much for your property. I absolutely hate when somebody sends me a comp analysis and they put the average of all the comps in their data set. You're never going to get that. You might get lucky, but for the most part, from what I've seen, you end up somewhere down here. Okay. This is basically at this price, if it's a quality property, it has road frontage, it's somewhat flat, and you want to sell it within 30 to 90 days, it's probably going to be in this price point. But if you let it sit on the market or it's commercial and you're patient, you might end up somewhere in the middle or somewhere slightly above that. But for the most part, we're sitting here. So get that ingrained in your head, because I comp very conservatively. You're going to be shocked why I comp so low. And this is because I do that. Jesse, you have any questions on that?
Nope, I'm good.
Perfect. So Ari sent me the data set that you guys exported together in the previous webinars. So I'm going to briefly pull up that data set, and we're going to go over your mailer pricing or your blind offer pricing. So regardless of what you're doing, mail, text, cold call, email, it would be the same framework for this if you're trying to qualify your leads based on price. Okay. So let me pull that up. Okay. So this is our Excel spreadsheet of everything inside that data set. So what I'm gonna quickly do is turn this into Excel spreadsheet instead of a CSV. So let me change this real quick. Okay, bring it back in. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove calculated acreage so we don't get confused. I always go off of normal acreage. This is basically what the deed conveys. Calculated, it's based on the GIS, Inside Land Insights. So we're going to go off of normal acreage. So I would never go off of calculated acreage. This is what the deed says. This is usually what's going to be the most accurate. Okay. So I can just move this column over here just to make things simpler. And then I'm going to add a column that is value. Okay. And then I'm also going to add another column that is offer. So right here, we're going to figure out what our value is, and then we're going to make an offer based on that value. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter our data set in smallest to largest order. So as you can see here, our minimum acres is 2.5 acres, and our max is 711 acres. So we know we need to price out 2.5 to 711 acres. So I'm just going to go into a different spreadsheet. I'm going to take that note, 2.5 to 711. And then I'm going to show you guys my strategy for quickly pricing your direct mail offers. So our lowest point is 2.5 and our highest is 711. And we have to connect the dots, okay? It's going to be very difficult for me to comp every single acreage point because there's 3.73 acre properties, there's 17.5 acre properties, and you can't find comparables that close. But we know what the normal size properties are that you can consistently see in your comps. So the normal size properties are 2.5, let's say 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 100, 200, and our final one would be 711. So the most common property that I see is 5 acres, okay? 80 acres is very common, 40 acres is very common, 20 is very common, but 17 acres not common, right? So you guys will understand this in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the values of each one of these, and then I'm going to do a rise over run equation to connect the dots between these. So this is a way to quickly create your trend analysis without actually having to do a trend analysis with a bunch of stats. So it's going to be difficult. Like you guys may get lost at some points, but just watch very closely and just listen to what I say, and things will start making sense if you listen carefully. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what a 2.5 acres is worth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Land Insights, and we're in Gilchrist County. I believe this is Florida.
Hey, Ron, we can't see Land Insights. It's just your spreadsheet right now.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, cool.
So I believe it's Gilchrist, right? Gilchrist County, Florida.
Yep.
I'm just going to pull a random property from there. So here's our link. I'll just plug it in here. Okay, so this is the property. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go into our comping tool. And we're going to try to figure out what a 2.5 acres worth in this county. All right, so what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put our sold comps to 2 years. So this puts in our data set the last 2 years of comps. What I've realized in the last 2 years is values haven't really changed in the land market over the last 2 years. So even 3 years, it hasn't changed that much. So I'm just going to do 2 years so that everything in our data set goes 2 years back. And then we can just go in here. So some people like to make estimates on value based on the spreadsheet. I'm a very visual person. So you can go statistics and figure out like your lower end of the bell curve based on the statistics, but I'm a very visual person, so I like to use the visual tool. So I'm gonna set my acreage bands 2 to 3 acres, and let's see what comes in our data set. So we have the lowest 2 and the highest 3 acres, and then you're gonna see everything that comes through in that acreage band. So everything that shows up is within 2 to 3 acres. And for the most part, when I'm comping my blind offers, I'm just looking at sold comps. When I'm comping deals, I'm going to start looking at for sale comps, because that's going to be more relevant to what's now, because we can, sorry, we're still coming through. Yeah. Okay. So that we can see what we're competing with on the market. All right, so there's not much going on inside the area of this property, but I'm just trying to figure out where our county lines are. Okay, we didn't have that selected. Okay, so now we can see our county lines. So I'm not going to use any of these comps in here because that's outside our county. I'm going to be looking more at what's inside our county. So there's not a lot locally in this area, but since we're pricing by the county in this situation, we can use all these comps in the county. So again, bell curve. I'm looking for stuff down here, right? So lower end of the spectrum. Okay. So we see 18K per acre. We see a 5K per acre that's under contract. Let's zoom in here. 16K. There's some more in here. 16K per acre. 19K, 18K. I'm assuming that there's something horribly wrong with that property if it's so low. 15K per acre, 22K, 22K. So I'm seeing like a range of 15K to 25K an acre in this data set. So I'm leaning more towards that 15K to 16K value, because obviously there's 22K acre comps, but that is more up here or more over here. Whereas 15K is more over here. Just 16K is more over here. And then you have some of your outliers, like that one that seemed like it was horribly wrong, the 5K an acre, the 2K an acre. There's probably something wrong with those properties, and we can confirm that. So let's go find that one. This one right here. This one's under contract for 5K an acre. Let's view it. Property zone ESA2. I don't know what that means. If you see recreational property in your data set, there might be something wrong with it. That's always weird when someone says recreational and not like residential or agriculture. Let's see. You have to install your own well, septic system, power lines in front of the property. Property is located 100% entirely within a flood zone. That's why it's so low. So we discovered it's so low because it's in a flood zone, right? That's why it's in that range. So we would just take that out of our data set, and we're going to rely on those 15K acre to 20K an acre comps. So at the end of the day, I've realized that 2.5 acres, so we can just mark a 15K. Let's find that one. I'll just go find it in here. So I'm just going to mark it. And what the manual comp tool is going to do is it's going to give me that value. So it thinks 2.5 acres is worth 37,500. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that into our spreadsheet. And that's our value. Okay, that's our conservative value. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 5 acres and figure out what the 5 acres are worth. Okay. So we'll just pull another property from our data set. Go to 5, find this link. Uh-oh. And we're just going to plug it in. All right, so things are coming a little slow on my end since we're streaming, but it's loading. So there's our 5 acre. We're just going to click comp. And again, we're going to set our filters, our acreage filters. We'll set that 4 to, let's do 6, just so we're getting stuff like that's 4.5, stuff that's 5.5. All right. And then we're going to set our sold comps back 2 years. And then let's go searching. So again, bell curve, lower end of the bell curve. That's what we're doing. Okay, so we've got a lot of here that's probably in a flood zone, just like the last one. But for the most part, I'm seeing a large range. So I'm seeing 10K an acre, 15K an acre, another 10K an acre, 13K an acre, 10K an acre, 17K an acre. So again, I'm very visual, and it doesn't have to be perfect what that is in that bell curve. But instantly what I'm seeing is like that lower end is 10K. Let's just make sure there's nothing wrong with these 10K an acre comps. If these properties that sold look like they're decent properties, there's nothing wrong with them, we should be good. So let's look at the description. I'm not seeing anything that sticks out to me that would there's something to be wrong with the property. So let's look at another one. Let's look at this one. It's kind of a bad listing. I don't even know if there's a description. Yeah, there's no description on that one. Land is cleared. It looks like there's somewhat of road access. I'm not sure what. I can't really make out what's the situation with this road access. Let's just read the description. Property is cleared. Doesn't bring anything about road access. I'm just going to keep looking. Let's look at this 12. Yeah, our descriptions are horrible in this area. Okay, this looks like a very decent property as long as it's not in a flood zone. This sold for 12K an acre. Flood zone X, high and dry. So I don't know what flood zone X is, but he said high and dry. There's houses were built on both sides of it. I assume there's nothing wrong with it if houses are built on both sides and it's flat. So this seems like a decent property to me. And that's at 12.5K an acre. And then we consistently saw 10K acre comps, another 11K. If we're consistently seeing that, That would be very abnormal for all of these to be horrible properties. So I'm assuming here it's probably worth 10K an acre. Conservatively, the conservative value. Again, you might get 17K an acre in some places, but I'm being so conservative that like I know if we get this, if we list this for 10K an acre, it's probably going to sell very fast. I'm not saying it's not going to sell at 17K an acre, but I'm always conservative. And usually when I'm conservative, I'm always correct. Okay. So obviously we're going to try to list it at 17K an acre. Like if we really want to juice out the value, unless we're on a short timeline, we might just list it at 12K an acre and then slowly drop the price over time. But 10K an acre is my lower end of the bell curve value. It's over here, right? It's in here. If we're here, we're conservative. We can be very confident on that value. I wouldn't want to say market value 17K an acre when we see a bunch of 10K an acre comps in the last 2 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that to the spreadsheet. And I realized that 5 acres is worth 10K an acre, which is 50,000. Okay, so now you guys are probably thinking in your head, what about 3.5 acres? What about 4 acres? How do we come up with that value? So this is where we bring up y equals mx plus b. This is a very simple math equation. So it's basically your rise over run. At what rate does it linearly climb? Linear. So we're doing a linear calculation. We're not doing a curve, any exponential curves. We're just keeping it simple for you guys. Linear. Okay, so we're going to do linear between these two. Okay,
as soon as
so
you said y equals mx plus b, I just had a flashback of math suddenly. It's like, slow down there, big guy. Oh, man.
So you guys, everyone in this group is probably like, what the heck's y equals mx plus b? You guys will understand it when I break this down in Excel. So all we're doing is just figuring out the linear rate at which this climbs. Okay. If you guys are confused at all, just look this up and you'll figure out linear y equals mx plus b. But this is it. So we're figuring out our rise over run. So how much it goes up in value as it goes up in acreage. So this equals the top minus the bottom divided by top acreage minus the bottom. Okay, so that's our slope. Our linear slope is 5,000. So every time it climbs an acre, it goes up $5,000. So if you were at 3 acres and it goes to 4 acres, it climbed up in value $5,000 over that time. So now I'll just bring up some examples. So let's say we're trying to fill in the gaps here. So we know this is 37,500 and this is 50,000. We're going to do it is equals your beginning value plus your climb in acreage. So it went up 0.5, right? And then times your slope, 5,000. And so that we drag it and that value stays there, we just add these dollar signs to keep that value there. Yes. And then we can drag it. So we can drag this. And we'll see that, hey, I told you guys slope is 5,000. Every time it goes up in value by 1 acre, it goes up 5,000. And this works. Let's say this works for every little acreage point. Let's say it's 4.3 acres. Works for this as well. We can drag it and it automatically calculates that jump in value. So it connects the dots. We can drag this, and this is at 50,000. I didn't put that equation there, but go here. It goes up to 50,000. So between 2.5 and 5 acres, we're just filling in the gaps, and this is the best way I've realized to do it quickly. So we can just drag this equation into your data set. So we can just use 5,000 instead. So we'll just go inside our data set. So we're doing the calculation for the value equals. So this original value is going to be, what was it? 37,500. So we just want to have a starting point, and then we're going to have our end point as well. So that's 5 acres, and that is $50,000 value. We're simply going to do equals the same exact equation we just did. This plus this minus this times our slope, which was 5,000. So as you can see, it's 2.5 acres, therefore it's going to stay the same. But as we start climbing, it's going to climb in value. So as you can see, it started climbing in value. So we just drag this all the way to 5 acres, and our gaps are filled in. So there's all your values for filling in the gaps. So simply what you're going to do over time is you're just going to do that same exact thing for the rest of these acreage points. And that's how you can quickly build a confident offer list without making it too complex. You guys might think it's a little complex in the beginning, but when you do this over and over and over again, you're going to realize it's not that hard. You just follow this framework. You can watch this video over and over again, but this is how my team does it. This is how we build out lists at scale accurately. So you're just going to go through the rest of these. You're going to figure out what these values are. So let's say this is $90,000. You're going to do the same exact thing. So you're going to figure out what your slope is first. So your slope is this minus this divided by this minus this. So your new slope for this difference is 8,000. So you're just doing the same equation between 50,000 and 90,000 for 8,000. So let's just say that's the value. You're going to bring this in here, and you're going to do the same thing. So it equals this plus this minus this times 8,000, which is your new slope. And then you just drag it all the way to 10 acres. As you can see there, it lines up. So you're just connecting the dots in between those, and we're doing it linearly. As you guys know, like land, it kind of follows an exponential decay graph. I'll show you that. Land does this. Land values do this over time. So it follows more of like this kind of curve, and it eventually kind of flattens out over time. So as you know, low acreage, it sells at a really high price per acre. So call this your price per acre and call this your acres over time. Land starts at a very high price per acre, but slowly, like as you're reaching, let's say 700 acres, like between 400 and 700 acres, your price per acre isn't going to change that much. But between 2 acres and 10 acres, it's going to change a significant amount. So it usually follows this, and this is hard to model if you're using stats. But if you want to like if you want to comp visually, which I like to do, the best way to create this is by doing linear connections between certain points. And over time, if you graph that price per acre, it's going to follow somewhat of this trend. So this is how I've dumbed it down so that we can figure this out. And I see a lot of you guys here, you're throwing in some equations. Everyone does it differently. I'm just explaining it so that anybody can do it. Obviously, there's other ways you can do this. There's like certain equations you can use in Excel. You can put in a whole sale price spreadsheet and create this trend line and put that in your data set. But that can be complex for a lot of people. And I'm just trying to teach a system that works and is scalable and it's not too complicated so that anybody on your team can do this in the future. It's going to be difficult to teach somebody a crazy equation that you plug into Excel and they're based in the Philippines and they know a little bit of math. But like this, you could teach anybody. Like the process I taught is you could teach anybody to do it. But obviously there's more complex ways to do it. If you want to take it further, you're definitely, I have your approval to, or you have my approval to go do it. This is the way I do it. Jess, you have any questions?
No, I'm good. I did see a question there. Byron asked if you did conservative pricing like this and you sent out like 5,000 mailers, do you think you get can you get a deal done? You think?
Do you think you could run a 5,000 letter per month land flipping business with this conservative pricing, or do you need extremely high volume of mail in order to get enough deals? So let's go over offers. Okay. So this should answer your question. All right. So we know that the conservative value of 2.5 acres is 37,500. If we list it at that, it's probably going to sell at that. So we can make a 50% offer on that value. So that would just be 18,750. Okay. So I'm very confident if you get it at that price, as long as it's a decent property, would sell at this. Now, sometimes people want to be more competitive, and Byron, your question is more related to like the offer percentage on this. So if I'm being conservative, like I know this is probably the value of the land out here. So if we offer 50%, that's our margin right there. It's about a 50% margin. It's going to be less than that after closing costs and realtor commissions. So I honestly don't recommend you go over 50% of market or 50% offer, because you're just not going to have enough margins. I mean, you can make a double close happen with this, but it's going to be difficult to do when your margins are down. I would rather just make a lower offer. And yes, you're going to have a successful business if you offer 50% of value with this conservative pricing. But I don't recommend going over 65% offer on this. If you did 0.65, I don't really recommend making that offer. It's not worth it at all. You want that deal to be low. And I'll be honest with you, I'm doing a 40% offer on this. That's what I would be offering if I were you on this data set. I would just drag this down.
Rylan, coming back to the comping that you did earlier, sorry to cut in here. You were doing that at scale. Were you or I guess I just sort of answered, but you were doing that at scale. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're able to do this at scale. We're doing this every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll chime in here, and that's what's so great about what Rylan's doing here is when you're sort of creating all this data for yourself, it makes making offers or pricing things a lot quicker when it lives in one place. So I would grab this out of Land Insights, do the math that you need to do, bring that all in with your data set so it lives in that your single source of truth. So when you do need to run your comps, when you do need to make an offer or pricing, whatever it is, now Rylan's here talking about doing a blind offer, but you have all of that information with you, and it's very, very easy, to just hop into Pebble to say generate an offer, generate a campaign based off these numbers already that already exist for the for the property itself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the more data you can bring in, the easier your process is going to be. And it's easy to update information too if you want to run the math afterwards. But I think you'll do this you'll do this kind of work up front anyways. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Jesse. Like, guys, it's very important you have this data inside your CRM. You can upload this all into Pebble, and a lead calls you. You'll figure out who that is calling you.
Yeah.
What that offer is you made, so you don't have to dig anywhere else for it.
Yeah.
And then you can also pull the link to the property so you can quickly view it. So make sure that this link to the property is inside Pebble. You upload that inside Pebble, and you can quickly just open it and analyze it.
Yeah. So when you're on that call, you have everything. So I think like one thing to understand about Pebble is it serves as sort of a database for the properties that you've brought in. Sure, you're going to link out to things like this and like Land Insights and be able to look at things a little bit more closer, whatever it may be. But we're not just capturing leads here. We're managing the sheer amount of data. Thousands of property records here. So you want to be able to pull that up quickly. Again, we sort of facilitate for that and make that quite easy to bring up immediately when you're on that call or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and like Pebble basically just serves as the service that connects the dots, the service that organizes everything for you, because there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of data, and Pebble just makes it so easy to organize it all, so that all you have to worry about is really just the conversation you're having with the seller. That should be your only worry after you export and price this data. Just that conversation. So we've made it easy for you guys to organize it. So make sure your CRM is organized. Make sure you follow all the steps to make sure like you've got a clean room. You can't scale a business if you don't have a clean room. So this leads into deal comping. So let's say somebody calls you inside Pebble and you have a conversation with them. They're interested in selling. Guy says, hey, I saw you offered, let's just look at a random property. Saw you offered $34,432 on my 9.51 acre property. And you're like, yep, I did. Do you have any interest in that? And he says, yep, I want to sell it at that. Or maybe, you know what? I want $45,000 for my property. Okay. Property we think is worth $86,000. Guy wants $45,000 for it. They'll say, okay, you'll ask a bunch of questions about the property. Is there a flood zone on it? Is there utilities, all that stuff? And then you say, okay, let me bring this by my team, or let me look at it myself, look at the property, and I'll let you know if I can do $45,000 for that. So after that call, you're going to go in your CRM, you're going to pull that link to the Land Insights property, and we're going to analyze this, figure out what it's worth. So my comping strategy is a little different when a deal comes in. It's a little more diligent. So instantly I'm going to look at wetlands, flood zones. Okay, this property's ruined. Property's not worth it. I mean, there are, maybe it's not ruined. There might be properties in, these properties got developed on with that flood zone. Yeah, it's wetlands. So flood zone combined with wetlands. So all of this is a flood zone, but there's a wetland here. You're probably not going to be able to build here. Therefore, we'll need to make a discount. So this is going to be an interesting one because this is a complex one. This is very difficult for a lot of new people to comp, difficult for everybody to comp. I don't even think there's utilities like power lines right here. So we're going to have to comp very conservatively on this. So we'll start with what are normal properties selling at in this area? So we'll click comp property. And we're already seeing some similar properties in the area. So this property is 9.5 acres. And then these comps are for 9.51. So I wonder if this is the same property. Okay, it's that shape. So yeah, that's the same property. It just sold July 12th in 2024. It would have been really hard to see this without any other platform. This instantly raises a red flag if this guy reaches out to me and says, yeah, I want to sell. because this just sold less than a year ago for $46,000. Just the same exact property. So that's just one way you can find a red flag. If something sold recently and they want to sell again, there might be something wrong with it. Or maybe it was listed and it never sold. And we can confirm this. We can confirm the price it sold at. If we go down. Yep, so it sold for $46,000 10 months ago. So we can see that data right here inside our data set and confirm it actually sold at that price. So let's find something we haven't had a, I guess let's comp it anyways. Let's comp it, and I'll just go through my framework of thought. So we're looking at 9.5 acres. Let's look at 13. Let's look at, let's go 8. Let's go 8 to 12. Just so we're getting kind of stuff on both ends. And then we want to go to sold comps. We want to go 2 years back. See what's going on. So always the first thing I'm looking at is what's listed on the market right now. So this is different framework than offer comping, blind offer comping, because this is a deal that's on the table. That means if we buy this, it's probably going to be within the next 3 weeks. And then if we list it, it'll be about a week later. So within the next 4 weeks, we have to list this property for sale. So we have to start thinking about what's our competition when we list it on the market. So I'm going to look at all the for sale properties, which are all the blue ones, and I'm going to go in ascending order to see which ones are messed up within the vicinity of this area. So again, I'm a visual person. You guys can always go down this table and look at it, but I like to be visual on the map, which is why I always use the map. So the lowest one I've seen so far is 8K an acre. Yeah, in the whole county, the lowest listing right now is 8K an acre. We're going to look at that and qualify it, see if there's anything wrong with it. Okay, so it hasn't been updated in the data set, so therefore we don't have to worry about it. So let's go up now. What's the next lowest listing in the area? Everything's pretty high. So, okay, that was the 8K. Yeah, I mean, everything on the market is listed high, so we don't really have to worry about it. But let's say there was a 6K an acre comp, and we're seeing consistently like 11K, 14K, 13K, and there's a 16K an acre listing. We don't have to worry about that listing because now we're like the lowest value is that lower end of the bell curve for sales. So we don't have to worry about that for sale listing because we have to list it at that lower end of the bell curve of what's been sold, right? So we don't have to worry about this now. So now we're looking at that lower end of the bell curve for what's sold. So I'm visually figuring out where are these properties in the data set. 12K an acre, 13K, 3K. There's got to be something wrong with that. 8K. Let's see if there's anything wrong with this one. This sold for 8K. This sold for 8,400. Is there anything wrong with these? I'm just reading the description, looking for red flags. Well, septic on the property, abandoned home. I don't care about that. That's fine. Doesn't say there's anything wrong with it. So let's just confirm that with this one. Is there anything wrong with this one? Looks like it was thinned timber. You can kind of tell it was thinned. Ten acres of planted pines, no deed restrictions, manufactured homes. So it looks like there's nothing wrong with it. So we can use these. We can say, okay, these are on the lower end of the bell curve in our county, 8K an acre. I previously remembered that we comped 10 acres. No, we comped 5 acres. Let's go back. Yeah, we never comped the 10, but we all comped the 5 acres at 10K an acre. And so 8K an acre makes sense because it exponentially goes down. So I have a good feeling that 10 acres is worth 8K an acre, so 80 grand. Again, I just threw this number out there. I didn't actually look at that. I just threw it out there to help you guys calculate this. So 8K an acre makes sense. It's on the lower end. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that 8K an acre comp. I'll just click select. And now it's going to give us that value, 76. In this hypothetical situation, the guy wanted 45,000, 76. But again, there's problems with the property and we need to adjust that price. It was in a flood zone, wetland, and I don't think there's power lines in here. So this wetland, it covers about 50% of the property. You can't even get access to this point with those flood zones. So realistically, you only have this much room to work with. And that makes sense why this sold so low. So in this situation, you need to make adjustments to your value. So we comped it like it was just a normal piece of land, but it's not a normal piece of land. This has flood zones and everything on it. So this is why this tool is so important, because you need to get very analytical and you need to make adjustments. So I'll show you how I make these adjustments. So I don't know, 60%, 70% of this land is just not usable. It's just there. You can ride dirt bikes on it. You could run horses on it, but at the end of the day, like, it's not really worth it. So I'm just going to make an adjustment. So I'm going to put 40% adjustment for that. Like, I know only 30% of the land is useful, but like, you can still do stuff on it, right? So we wouldn't put a 70% discount if we can't use the land for building. But doesn't mean we put a 70% discount on it, right? We just make a slight adjustment to that. So like 40% would make sense in this situation. So when we do that adjustment, it now calculates the value. So now it thinks it's worth 4,800 an acre. Okay. And so that is pretty close. That's literally on like exact, basically, of what it actually sold at. So you need to make these adjustments in these situations. You could have made the same adjustment like based on slope or any of that. And what's cool is we just did this whole analysis and this work saves. When you open this link again, it's going to show that adjustment and you can take notes down here. Like, I adjusted value by 40% because wetland. And this all saves, it automatically saves. And when you open this link back up, you'll be able to open up this and look at your work again, so you avoid having to recomp ever. So what you want to do when you do this comp analysis, you want to copy this and you want to put it in Pebble so that you're organized. So now you go back to this guy, the guy wants 45 grand and it's actually really worth 45 grand. It's not a deal anymore. And you have to adjust your offer price. I think the offer was, let's see. Offer was 34,000. That's horrible margins. 35,000 to 45. You have to call this guy back. Hey, we just discovered that there's a crazy flood zone and wetland on the property. There's no power lines. Honestly, the best we can do is $23,000. So you'd have to go back to the guy and negotiate based on that. So that's why it's equally important to have your blind offer comping and then also your deal comping, because both strategies are different and the way you comp properties are going to be different based on the situation. So that's the framework, guys. That's basically what we do day in and day out with our comping team in our business. So I have several people doing that in their business and they've been very successful. So I guess at the end of the day, my word of advice is to stay conservative, stay very conservative, and follow the same exact framework for comping properties. And this is a great framework and a great tool to scale comping and do it the right way.
Awesome.
All right, Jesse, anything to add on this or any questions you have before we get into the questions in the comments?
No, appreciate you walking us through here in a very detailed look over your shoulder way.
Yeah. So let's see the questions. So
Well,
Art said there's a fill series equation in Excel that allows you to do with this 2 clicks and no formulas. Okay, guys, look into that. I'm going to look into that myself. So there's a fill series equation. I guess if you put multiple points in your data set, it can fill it. If I look into that, look up at YouTube or ChatGPT on that. I'll look into it myself. Ed asks, how is this different than priced comp reports? I mean, this allows you to be hands-on and look at these on a map. It allows you to make adjustments to your value. You can also use the calculator. So this is a cool way to comp your deal. So let's say you want to offer 50%, and then you want to bake in your realtor commission. So let's say you sell this with a realtor, and then you have your closing costs. We can figure out what your profit would be if you offered 50%. So if you offered 50% of this value, your profit margin would actually be this at the end of the day. It wouldn't be this because of all these baked in expenses. There's also just tons more that no other tools that I've ever used has. And this was made by a land investor, right? Somebody who's doing this day in and day out. It's very visual. It overlays everything you need. We have different ways to point out green flags and red flags in this area. So before we even opened up the overlays, we would have saw that this has more than 50% of flood zone and 50% wetlands. And it was purchased in the last 18 months. So you can just quickly make assumptions and quickly see red flags so that you can go dive into this stuff without having to actually go do it yourself. So there's tons here. I mean, I would recommend you can look into both tools, but at the end of the day, like everyone says, ours is the best. And yeah, I mean, I can't think of a tool that would be better than this at this point. So, yeah. And there's also a new tool we're coming out with in the coming months that is going to revolutionize this whole process. So stay tuned for that. I can't speak too much on it, but I can say it's been a game changer in my business so far because we've been testing it. Let's go.
Rylan, I need to hop off here in a minute.
Okay.
I can let you continue. I've got another call I got to hop into, but I'll let you continue here.
Okay. Sounds good, Jesse.
I'm in here, guys. And yeah, if you guys have any questions about Pebble, make sure you head over to pebblerei.com. You can book a demo there with us. Happy to talk to you about some of the things that people are doing with Land Insights and Pebble. But yeah, thanks again, Rylan.
Thanks, Jesse. All right. Mark Hudson said, do you price by aggregate by various acreage and conditions of the land? So you saw my process. You saw what I do. I'll make adjustments based on the conditions of each property when a deal comes through. But there's no way we can do that on the front end. But we can do it on the back end because we're looking at deals by deal. But there's no way you can accurately figure out the value of the land based on the conditions, the comps, and everything on the front end. It's not going to be accurate. Do you use ChatGPT or Gemini at background? No, we're not using ChatGPT or Gemini. We have internal AI calculations that we're doing. We also have a beta AI comp value. So it comped this at 57,000 after manually reviewing it, which I always recommend doing. We ended up at this $45,000 value because of that flood zone, because all the electricity. Byron, follow-up question. If you are only sending 5,000 letters per month, will enough people respond to these very conservative offers, or you need 10 to 20K a month to get enough responses? People will respond to these letters. Yes. And if you're offering higher than that, you're going to have a lot of problems with renegotiating your business. I just had a conversation with Coach who is running his land business, and he made the error of offering too much on a lot of these properties, maybe at like 60 to 70% margins. There's just 60% to 70% of market value. The margins aren't just there. And now he's having to circle back with these sellers, negotiate with them after they already thought they were going to get this amount that you offered, and it just pisses them off. So I always say, do it right on the front end to avoid those horrible conversations and those angry sellers. Sure, if you're a really, really good salesman, you can offer more and your response rate is going to be slightly higher because you offered more. but you still have to negotiate back on the back end. So choose your strategy at the end of the day. I'm just saying I recommend 40% of that conservative value because you're going to do it right on the front end. You saw with this property, we were still off because that flood zone, that problem with the property. So that deal probably never would have happened because we just offered too high originally. We had to circle back. But if that was a correct, like a decent property, we would have been right on the margin. We would have offered perfectly. So those are my recommendations. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I've got to bounce, but hopefully you got some value out of this. And we're going to continue doing more of these webinars in the future. If you guys like the tool, if you want to learn more about the tool, we can go in depth more with you, all for free. We'll do a demo call at landinsights.co/apply, and we'll give you 1,000 or more free hot leads. So we'll find a hot market for you. We'll scrub that data for you, and you can go in, price that data, and go mail it out yourself without spending $1. So if you guys want to test out the platform, I recommend you book a demo call, landinsights.co/apply. Again, it's all free. We'll give you free leads, and we'll go over the tool and any more questions you guys have. So appreciate it, y'all. Have a great week, and we'll see you in the coming weeks. Thank you.